Anivia is the classic slow, immobile control mage. Her wave clear is so fast it feels like you're watching TSM getting knocked out of Worlds and sent back to the airport. But I have found a player who turned this lane-focused scaling pick into a roaming support, with a crazy Predator rune page, and a really innovative teleport support strategy. This may be the weirdest pick in League of Legends, with special strategies starting even at level 1, before even getting to lane, as well as having perfect synergy with one of Anivia's skills, giving him an advantage every single game. He has turned a scaling late game mage into an early game fighter that runs circles around enemies. Oh, and also, this player is also known as the king of Wintrading in the Korean server, so he has quite a crazy story. This video is sponsored by Porofessor, an overlay app for League of Legends that gives you all kinds of useful information directly in the game, so you don't need to tab out or use another monitor. In Champ Select, Porofessor automatically gives you the statistically best runes when you lock in your champion. In loading screen you can see an analysis of your team comp, showing your strengths and weaknesses as a team. This lets you know which part of the game your team will be good at and which part to avoid. Does your team have a good split pusher? Should your team be the ones engaging the team fights? Maybe your team has a weak front line, and so you need to look for 1v1 fights instead. Porofessor lets you compare your play to the average at your rank. So if you're trying to get out of Platinum, you could compare yourself to the average player and see which parts you need to improve. Higher than average stats is a really great sign, and it's a good idea to keep these in mind while you play, but you can always hide them as well. One of my favourite ways to improve is to watch a challenger player play the champion that I want to learn, and you can do that in the Porofessor app right away. Sort by the champion you want to see and find a ton of high elo games to study. Porofessor is completely free, download it at the link in the description below. Our player today actually goes by a few different names and even plays on a few different accounts, for one reason: he is constantly getting banned by Riot. This is not the usual toxicity or trolling, it's actually because of his notoriety for getting paid to lose games, Wintrading to help enemies reach their desired rank. Because of this, he's always making new accounts, and the most recent one we will call Ren. In late season 10, a huge scandal broke out in the Korean League community. It was brought over to English speakers by ex-pro player Ole. A Chinese betting website was allowing illegal betting on Korean solo queue games, which of course led to match fixing for huge amounts of money. In Korea, Wintrading like this is called abusing, meaning it's abusing the system for personal gain. This started off not getting much attention, until Faker began to experience these players daily on his stream. They would intentionally lose games with Faker on their team to make sure that they got paid out. One of these players was Ren, our Anivia, who immediately got exposed for being part of this Wintrading scheme. Riot actually did take action and began to ban accounts, but of course new accounts always just appeared. I talked to 6 different Korean players to do research for this video, all of them over master tier. All of them knew exactly who Ren was and absolutely hated his Wintrading, as I'm sure everyone else does as well, including myself. But it's not his Anivia that's the problem. His Anivia is actually incredibly good. This Anivia strategy is so good that he's able to use it to consistently get to master tier on a new account in under 100 games super quickly. And after that, unfortunately he does start the Wintrading, which is why he always has a 0% win rate on Yuumi, not daring to ruin his actually really good Anivia stats. Without this crazy strategy, he would not be able to shoot up the ladder and play against people like Faker. So why is Anivia Support actually good? Anivia's biggest weakness mid lane is her weak early game, needing to farm a ton and get loads of expensive AP items to become relevant. And by that point she might be too immobile to even carry the game. Ren has invented a style that lets him contribute to games very early, join every fight possible, and survive in late game teamfights with a few special tricks. At level 1, this Anivia already has a really weird play to start the game with. Running out of base with just a support item, he pings the middle bush to get his team to stand in it. If no enemies are around, he walks up to tower, autoing it for gold from his spell thieves. He can do this 3 times, getting him 60 gold, which lets him base and buy a refillable potion, immediately getting a quick gold advantage, never needing to buy potions again. Instead, if enemies are around, he baits them in, creating an immediate uneven fight. His team are already there, prepared in the bush. Enemies will always be split up, so he can get them to chase him to their death, get a first blood, or at least summoner spells to help his team. Worst case, he can use auto attack, Q auto attack to get 3 spell thief stacks, and base for refillable. But the weird strategies don't stop there. In lane, Anivia takes Q. Level 1, your goal is to keep poking with autos, farming your free gold, thanks to your 600 attack range, higher than most AD carries, who are closer to 550. At level 2, Anivia takes E, once again using it for poke, but you can also start to get kills at this point, thanks to your already high damage and long range Q CC. At level 3, the lane completely changes. Anivia takes W and now has her wall. She can now completely block off escapes and trap enemies. This is incredible bot lane against AD carries, most of which do not have a dash to escape. And also especially good against supports, who once again mostly don't have dashes either. Champions like Vayne, Aphelios, Jhin, Lulu, Nami, Taric, when they get trapped by the wall away from their lane partner, they all have to instantly flash over the wall or they die. Anivia W also interrupts channels since it acts as a knock-up. This means in some matchups, like against Pyke, you can completely interrupt his game plan and cancel his hook. Anivia has an undodgeable combo to kill these carries. Using Q first, and then W to knock up the enemy slightly, they get locked in place in front of the wall, unable to dodge the stun flying at them. In so many matchups, this wall just gets him a free kill right away. Enemies are not prepared. But Ren is not done with his tricks. Right away from level 1, he has Anivia Egg. Usually this is quite a useless skill, as you often get it popped and die anyway, but the way Ren uses it bot lane is different. He's always right next to his AD carry in lane, so he knows that when his egg pops, the enemy will not be focusing him, because his AD carry is right next to him dealing damage, so he can likely respawn ready to rejoin the fight. If he ever makes a mistake or gets too low in lane, Egg gives him an extra life, as well as regens you back to full health. Instead of having to base, you can just walk up and try and make a play. You can even dive towers with it, using it to take an extra tower shot to help your team secure a kill. Just make sure you're running out of tower range, because it still focuses the egg. Ren bases as soon as he can afford boots of swiftness. Now his game plan really begins. With Predator boots, Ren becomes an engaged champion that can move quickly to join fights as well as gank. He doesn't even need to wait for his jungler, he can walk in, land a wall to block their escape, stunning, getting a kill and starting to snowball other lanes. Predator with these cheap early boots changes Anivia completely into an impossible to catch, impossible to run away from, high CC carry. An undervalued part of Predator is the extra damage you get on your next ability, meaning Anivia doesn't need Electrocute because she can still kill carries. Ren is not a bot lane focused support, instead knowing that Anivia's strength is catching enemies alone in 2v1s, so he even roams top lane for kills. Taking Teleport as his secondary summoner spell breaks the rules of what a support can usually do. If there is ever an important fight, he is there for it. Whether this is early game to turn a gank, he is there, playing like a top laner who TPs in to completely change the fight. It's like your team has an extra lane with global pressure. If the enemies gank someone, Anivia can show up to kill them instead. Thanks to her being a support, she doesn't even need to worry about her missing CS bot lane, caring more about the impact these early fights have on the rest of the game. Often in solo queue the first fight is the most important, so with Teleport the support gap will always be on your side. Teleport lets Anivia avoid the risk of moving into river to try and roam. As an immobile squishy mage, walking into the river can be very high risk. Instead, he can just be in lane, helping his AD carry, see a fight happening topside, and teleport right into it, creating an advantage. Combining this with Predator makes his early fights very strong. He's able to reach fights faster, and always have an impact. But of course, he even has one new strat for Teleport itself, setting up his own TP flank ward, then teleporting to them to get surprise plays off at random times. Like here, Anivia wards this bush bot lane, then bases. An enemy overextends bot, so Anivia can TP onto the ward she placed and flank for an easy kill. In this game, his AD carry messes up early and dies, and then even Anivia dies as well. But Teleport lets them punish the enemies who are overextending. He buys boots for Predator, and then zooms back into the lane for a double kill. This happens all the time in top lane, a player getting a solo kill and then overstaying. So now it can happen bot lane as well. At level 6, Anivia gets ult, which acts as another CC tool. With your ult, Ren gets zone control like no other support. It has high damage and is highly disruptive to the enemy team. Playing against any dive support, you actually cannot lose. They engage, use your ult to slow them and wall them so they can't even move. Against carries, your ult can slow them so you can land a wall and lock them in front of your team. In mid game, Anivia keeps roaming and can even begin to 1v1 carries thanks to her crazy ult damage, which increases to 200% when you leave it going for 1.5 seconds. Also using his E afterwards, which has its damage doubled thanks to the ult. You don't even need Ignite to kill, because Anivia's skills just work so well together to trap enemies. He maxes E first for maximum burst, so at level 11 you have 5 points in E and 2 in ultimate. You really don't need more damage. Thanks to your wards and teleport, you can control vision in the enemy jungle, while also setting up wards ready for fights. Usually this job is split between 2 people. The support wards, and the top laner looks for a good ward to teleport to for the fight. So both of them might normally lack knowledge. The support might not know where to ward, and the top may miss a good good ward to TP to, but since Ren has so much teleport experience, he knows which spots are good for flanking tops like an R, and also good spots for grouping top laners, like a squishy Silas, which Anivia can also teleport to. In teamfights, Predator has an even better use. Predator in fights is as good as Ghost as a summoner spell, but it's much lower cooldown, letting Anivia continue to chase fights, positioning safely with a huge extra movement speed. Without this rune, Anivia is a slow mage that struggles to reach enemies, but with it, she is a CC and damage machine that can contribute as much as a mid laner. His egg in fights is just like a guardian angel. A revive like this is a deterrent for enemies. There's no point focusing her as she will just waste your time. She'll make you overextend to try and kill her, and then she might still respawn. It actually does work well if you do get focused. Ren buys his Zhonya's and baits enemy skills, looking like he's really kinda trolling out of position. He wastes the enemy's time and forces them to overextend, just to try and kill a support, so that's always gonna lead to a good fight afterwards. Otherwise, if he's not baiting, he instead focuses on being a backliner. He has so much zone control on Anivia, so the enemies struggle to even get to you. This means that you can play Anivia without the high pressure of getting dived like you usually have. Team fighting on her in the backline is usually very hard, but if you're playing support, it's much less likely you get focused. You can take high risks to get a good engage, or you can just win a fight with your damage. Creating picks is Anivia's speciality. Ren uses some really perfect wall placement to completely block off choke points. There are some areas of the map that Anivia can just deny completely, meaning enemies with no flash are just dead. Late game, Anivia becomes more of a mid laner than a support. You have the high damage and high zone control, and can use it to make risky plays, because it's always worth it to trade your life with the enemy carry when you're a support. Predator lets you get more picks, which can win games alone. This game his team is behind, they're losing fights, but he runs up mid, getting a catch with his speed, securing a free kill, which his team can use to push an objective. Stalling games is also always possible, as Anivia is a great anti-siege mid, and she is still just as good as a support. You can clear waves with ult, block enemies hitting tower, and then trap people, setting up a great engage. So even though Korean solo queue is full of surrenders of 15 minutes, in elos below master, games can often be stretched out just by the Anivia, giving her team time to scale up and come back, making it the perfect low elo pick. Teleport will always be the best late game summoner spell to have, as it lets you create advantages by itself. Anivia can be pushing a side lane with her wave clear, draw an enemy down to match her, and then teleport away to join a fight. She can be warding away from her team and teleport to stop someone being caught. It gives you a lot more options than the usual ignite, which is nearly useless late game as everyone's damage is so high already. The only real use of it is previous wounds, so the build takes care of that instead. He starts spell thieves every game. His first base is for boots of swiftness so he can start making plays. His first item is Imperial Mandate, it gives loads of damage and is also very cheap. His second item is Zhonya's to bait enemies. Anti-healing with Oblivion Orb is a good option as well. You don't really need any more items. In Korea, these games are already over by this point. Your goal in solo queue is not to scale up as a support, it's to overwhelm the enemies around the map and continuously get your team ahead until you have an unbeatable lead. Every game he bans Thresh. Any hook support will be good against Anivia as she has no dash to dodge them. Ideally you want to pick this with a self-reliant AD carry who won't die 1v2 when you need to teleport away. Your real goal is to win the 3v3 topside by turning it into a 4v3, so your AD carry needs to be able to stay alive. His runes Predator of course, Zombie Ward for more vision control, and Relentless Hunter to set up more plays. Secondaries he has Biscuits and Time Warp to help him survive in lane, since Anivia has such a limited health pool. This kinda removes that weakness. He also always takes double magic resist in his runes, which I think is a bit troll. He even does it against enemy teams where only one of them is AP. Attack speed though is good as it lets him proc his support item more often, but maybe take one armor or health rune instead.